Good evening, everyone. I apologize for my voice. I have some type of laryngitis thing going on. My sidekick over there, Mr. Tester, will help me if I'm starting to fail. But I need a vote to go into closed session for discussion and or action regarding those items of business exempt from open meetings under general laws of Rhode Island, RIGL 42-46-5, A1, A2, A4, A8, A9.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Could we please do the Pledge of Allegiance? For our new business, which is the FY23. Definitely need it. Okay, thank you. Which is the FY23 Superintendent's Recommendation Budget. Superintendent?
Yes. As you know, we are here tonight to present the FY23 Superintendent's Recommended Budget. This was a very lengthy process, and each budget manager put together their budget requests. These requests amounted to $23 million. The central administrative team met with each budget manager, had them prioritize the items in their budget, and then we reviewed, discussed which line items could be cut, what line items could be maybe moved into grant or ESSER funds. And the Director of Finance, Assistant Superintendent McCaffrey, and myself, we met again to put forward additional cuts to get the balance down to $5,882,000. So we did put a lot of resources in ESSER grants. We had to be creative on getting the things that we really need, and we prioritized. So I would like to introduce the Director of Finance, Tim McGrath, who will be presenting our FY23 budget.
Thank you, Superintendent Danbrook. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the school committee. Tonight I'm here to present the FY23 Superintendent's Recommended Budget. Let's jump right in. You have this in your packet, but here's a breakdown of the revenue from 2019 to 2022, an estimate, and also the FY23 recommended budget. You'll see over the years not much of the revenue has remained consistent. A few differences in revenues impacting the FY23 budget are a slight reduction in state aid of $7,000 and a reduction in tuition revenue of approximately $550,000. We are not seeing the same number of students attending the CTC programs as we have in the past. Next up, we'll take a look at a summary of the expenses. Here's the summary of the expenses broken down by UCOA major object codes in the superintendent's recommended 23 budget. Here's the same data displayed as a pie chart using the UCOA major object codes. You'll notice that the two largest pieces in blue and pink are related to employee services, employee personnel services, and employee benefits. This equates to approximately 80% of the entire school department's budget. In preparation of this budget, we have found two of the largest pieces of the pie containing a handful of significant increases that we have little or no control of. Here's an overview of the four largest impacts to those two largest pieces of the pie, which represent over 80% of the recommended budget. We need to include the following items: contractual salary increases of $3 million, healthcare increases of $500,000, of which the trust has recommended 2.7, but we're able to knock that down to $500,000. We're seeing a state pension increase of $1.8 million, and the WISE pension correction of approximately $900,000. So all these add up to the $6.2 million I mentioned earlier. So back to the pie chart. Of the other 20% of the budget is divided into the 6 other pieces of the pie. Other purchase services, purchase property services, supplies and materials, capital equipment and property, debt service, and miscellaneous. The largest of the 6 pieces of the pie is other purchase services, which is 70% of the remaining 20% of the budget, or 14% of the whole budget. Although this breakdown of these items is spelled out in the budget documents, here's an overview. So of the $25 million of purchase service, $12.5 million is related to transportation, and $12.1 million is related to added district tuitions, which is 97% of that 14, or $24.7 million of that $25.4 million. So to reiterate the previous slides, I put together this chart kind of describing a basic breakdown of the superintendent's recommended budget. So the overall expenses are that top number, the 1,795. And of that 179, 143 million of that is related to personnel and employee benefits. This leaves $35 million to run the rest of the district. Of that $35 million, 12.5 and 12.1 represent transportation and tuition, which totals 24.7 million. This leaves us with $11 million to run the rest of the district. Of that $11 million, we have to pay for the utilities of $4.6 million, insurance of $600,000, audit legal of $430,000, and repairs and maintenance of $889,000. This chunk adds up to $6.5 million, leaving us $4.4 million to run the rest of the district. And of that, I've categorized them into operational materials and service, along with students' materials and services. And those are spread throughout the remaining object code items that exist. What we are presenting today is a result of a process spanning months, where budget directors came together, presented all their requests. This chart shows where that process started, and where cuts were made, and where items were placed into the ESSER 3 grant. So to start, we had, when all the budget managers submitted their request, that total added up to $196 million. Through meetings, we cut approximately $12 million, and we're able to move $5.4 million into ESSER 3 and other grants. This shows a total reduction of $17 million. This leaves us with the superintendent's recommended of the $179.5. Of those items, the notable cuts are salaries, health insurance, transportation, and the chunk that added up in the 5-7 series. This last table contains a comparison between the superintendent's recommended 23 budget along with the school committee's adopted 22 budget, showing the increase in the various categories and also demonstrating the additional ask from City Council. So what does this all mean? The superintendent's recommended budget seeks an additional $5.8 million over the original, over level funding appropriations. In conclusion, expenses were reviewed to reduce the FY23 budget asked to the lowest levels possible. Doing that, I adjusted revenues to match current trends, and we also asked the directors to understand their visions of the new directors we have. That was why the ask was so high originally. And we're also utilizing one-time federal funds for non-reoccurring items when possible. So that concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGrath. At this time, we can start questions. Mr. Testa?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McGrath, thank you very much. Before I kind of dive into a little bit of what your presentation was, I think everybody needs to know how the structure works, not just here, all through New England, where if you go through the rest of the country, the vast majority of the country, school boards are separate taxing entities. In New England, it's not the case. So the one area of the budget that a school department really has very little control over is its revenue, right? Because we can't raise it. We can't charge for this or charge for that. We can't charge people to ride a bus. We can't charge people to play sports. So we have no control over the revenue side. So all we can really do, the only lever we have, is our expense side. In your presentation, when you put the 2023 ask and you strip out salaries, benefits, you strip out the purchase services, et cetera, you end up with about $4.5 million, right? Essentially to get all the other stuff. You know, a week ago we were here, we bought curriculum for $1 million plus, just curriculum, right? So that $4 million is about 2% of the budget. So because you can't impact your revenue side, for those who think that school departments should run like a business, and I work in the private sector, I know revenue. When you can't raise it and all you can do is control your expenses, it really puts some handcuffs on you. I've been up here, this is my 6th budget, and Ms. Backus is 10th, I think. Plus I was a member of the public for 20 years. I've seen this kabuki dance every single year. And it's really a bad system. In my personal opinion, the school committees and school boards should have the ability to tax within limits, of course, but then it truly controls its own destiny. So maybe my grandchildren might see that, I don't know, but so having said that, one item in your slideshow, when you talked about the pensions, you had the state pension contribution, you had the WISE pension correction. Explain to me what the correction is.
Yes, so that 900,000 represents the increase from 2022 to 2023 to the $1.8 million that is the estimated actuary's recommended contribution. So that correction is kind of, we worded it as correction to kind of reflect the idea that we're jumping into this higher category that is correcting up to this 1.8 that we should expect to see running forward, depending on rates of return, things along those lines.
Okay, so the ARC is going to be 1.8. That's the highest I think it's ever been. I think usually, historically we've put in 1.2 every year, whether the ARC was 1.2, 8, 750, and we got pilloried for that, right? But it is concerning to me that we budget 900 and now we're expected to put in $1.8 million. That's pretty steep. So I know we talked earlier today, so whenever the pension people are around, I would like to know what the health of the pension is, because when you look at, over the last year, I know the market hasn't done that well, but pensions typically don't float with an S&P 500 or anything like that. They're invested a little more conservatively. So, but the S&P over the year is flat, going back 12 months. So, I don't know, I just, that's, to be brutally honest, that's a big number for me. But I would also point out that of the 5.8, the pensions alone are 2.6. So, again, when you can't control the revenue side of the equation, it makes it difficult. The out-of-district tuitions you had at 12 million.
Correct.
What UCOA codes are those? Because I'm going to look at this later. I'm not going to suggest any changes to the budget tonight. I'm going to take the next week to do that. But I'm just trying to figure out 12 million. I didn't think it was that high for out-of-district tuitions.
So that also includes special services? I lumped all those together?
Oh, okay, so those are the kids we send out of district for special programs, which are extremely expensive.
Yes.
So, okay, because I think is it about 4 million for pathways and for charters and things like that. I thought we were at about 4 million for that. So the balance would be, okay. Okay.
Yep, so the 55,610 is tuitions at other districts in state. And then the 55,630 is tuitions private sources. And then along 55,640, tuition special services, 55,660, tuitions charter schools.
Okay,
So that all adds up to
Yep.
the 12 million.
okay.
And those are all estimates based on looking at what we currently have, working with Gary to try and figure out who's going to be outplaced. But as we all know, those numbers are very fluid, and it just takes one student to go to a charter school to make a big change. in
Yeah,
those.
and even the kids who leave for charters or for pathways, I mean, it's a moving target until whenever you lock that number in. I would say that, you know, the Barton Gilman audit said that Warwick, for its size, doesn't have many kids going to charters. So most of our kids are going to pathways, which is a whole other story. All right, so I did that.
But that is starting to end this year, right?
I don't think so. I don't think they've made any changes to that yet.
Was it?
But about pathways and how easy it is for one person to go, you know, a student to leave Warwick to go to the NK business program.
The only change I'm aware of, and Mr. Hennius might be able to comment better on this than I am, there's the similar program rule that went out with the pathways.
Yes, the law was recently amended, but unfortunately, you're only going to capture, it is the, a similar program is now the standard, although RIDE has ruled that there are no similar programs throughout the state, so that's also being challenged right now. But it also only applies to students who were not enrolled prior to January 1, 2022.
Mr. McCaffrey, can you speak to that? Because I know you've been intimately involved.
Attorney Henny has said it all. At this point, RIDE doesn't consider any program substantially similar, and we are challenging that.
Now, that's a great court case.
If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Yeah, so, like I said, I'm going to go through line by line and see what we can do here. I mean, 5.8 is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. I think 5.8, it can be defended, but I think there's a reality that may butt up against 5.8. So for next week's meeting, I'll be emailing you a whole bunch of questions between now and then. So as you develop this budget, because when I look at some of these item codes, I look at transportation, I look at salaries and stuff like that, and I see that there's very large increases. Last year we went to the city with a balanced budget. We didn't ask for anything. So I'm assuming that for last year's budget, assumptions were made, right? So it would appear to me that some of those assumptions didn't pan out the way we had assumed. Is that accurate?
I would agree with that assessment. When I built the 23 budget, I built it from the ground up to make it my own, seeing it was my first budget to be produced. So I worked directly with the budget managers to make sure that their requests were accurate to what they needed to run their particular programs. So that might be something you're seeing in the effect of transportation and other areas. We built it from the ground up. So.
Okay, so as you do that, and so you start from square one, and you start to build it, and as you build it, I'm assuming that you find other things that don't match up, right? You just can't find it. There's nothing you can do about it because it is what it is, right? So going forward, I mean, this is yours, right? You don't own the past, you own the present and the future for however long you're here. So you talk to the city, right? Your communication with the city financial side when you're developing these, right?
Yes, I do talk to Peter Schaefer and Jason Parmalee, yes.
So the city has visibility to our budget, complete, right? They can see whatever they want.
Yes, at this point, they have all the documents you have, they have as well.
Okay. And I don't know how to ask this question, Mr. Hennies. My question is simply, they look at the budget, they look at the line items, they look at your math, right? And based on your discussions, do they have serious issues with your math?
I have not heard any issues with the math. The questions that I have fielded over the last couple of days are related to specific items, for example, pensions, different items. They definitely did a variance analysis from 22 to 23. So there's a lot of questions of, why is this increase? Why is that increase? And I've spent the last couple of days explaining that while prepping for the meeting. I do plan on, I did ask Jason Parmalee to set up a meeting with Peter Schaefer and myself the next couple of days to kind of see what other issues there are. I feel it's much more efficient to meet with them in person and kind of walk through it, because I do appreciate their feedback on those kind of items. So.
Good, and that's how it should be. It should be a back and forth flow of communication between us and the city. Okay, I don't think I have anything, well, when you build in for staff reductions, I just don't see a detail of what those reductions are, just raw numbers. So is that something we'll be provided with? Like how many, if it's WTU positions, if it's WISE positions, what the specifics are? Because I know in some of the documents, they were categorized kind of broadly. I think, and I don't want to go flipping and waste a lot of time here, but I think like do you think you listed cleaners in positions for WISE, and then
That should
some of
have,
them custodians, there's cleaners and
yes,
custodians?
that should have been custodians. Yeah, I'm working with the system that we have, and when it rolled all those up, it kind of took the first title, so it took cleaner instead of custodian. So there was a couple little naming issues that we had there, but Mr. Ruggieri does have the list of cuts that we can provide.
Yeah, as long as that's clarified. I mean, it should be clarified for us, should be clarified for the sake of WISE and WTU as well, so everybody, it's clear for everybody. Okay, and then I will, there's a couple of areas of cuts here that I can't agree with. They're not very big, they're small, so I will endeavor to go through the whole thing and find ways to reseed those. I think the NEST program, I think cutting that poses problems. There's a couple of other things there that I don't think we need to cut. So I've done this before, and it stinks. It's like 2019 all over again. I have to be honest. There are some areas that we have to focus on. The old adage when they asked Willie Sutton, why do you rob banks? He said that's where the money is. And in this budget, when 80% of your budget is tied up in people, it's easy to just cut people. That's the easiest thing in the world to do. But there's got to be other ways where you can be creative to not have to let go of people, but you got to go where that cost center is. And I think we have to get creative going forward in the future, because I don't think it's sustainable. But I would also acknowledge at last week's meeting when Ms. Necco gave the history here in Warwick, where in 2008 or 2009, during the Great Recession, the General Assembly in its wisdom allowed districts to cut 5%. Warwick cut the full 5%. The only district to do that, we may have been one of the only districts to cut it all. So that was worth about $6 million in 2008, 2009. And for the next 8 or 9 years, we got nothing except 2 years of $400,000 increases. State aid increased minimally during that part of time, nowhere near to replace the $6 million. So $6 million over 8 or 9 years is $48 million. Now, I don't think anyone expected $48 million, but in that interim, we closed buildings. We were highly criticized for that. We reduced staffing. We were highly criticized for that. So everything we did to live within our means, we were criticized for, which is kind of funny, but when you don't control the revenue side, that's what happens. So I think many of us grew thick skins during that time. So it's not a nice position to be in. This is becoming like Groundhog Day. But we'll dive into the budget. We'll come up with a number to present to the city, and we will go present it there. And I'd be very comfortable with whatever it is that we present. So,
If I could, I just want to note, to your point, Mr. Testa, the state aid for this year has actually decreased. That's a big issue. Normally, you would see a slight increase or substantial increases there, and we don't see that. We're actually seeing a decrease. So that's also playing into
And next year, because the last 2 years, the state has held districts harmless with state aid, essentially. But there's no provision for that next year, and there's gonna be a fiscal cliff for a lot of districts, Warwick included, when it comes to state aid. So my understanding is they're working on some changes now to maybe adjust the funding formula to try to reduce that impact. The funding formula is a Rube Goldberg-like thing to me. I don't understand all the variables, but there are some that they can change to help districts. But next year could be even worse. So, thank you.
Anyone else? I can go. There's been a lot of chatter amongst the community about how we spent the government money, the ESSER funds. And in my opinion, many don't understand the process of how this money was spent and the levels that we had and what we had to go through. And at this time, I think it would be very helpful if you just go through that so people understand how ESSER funding was spent, because it appears that people think we have these big loads of money sitting around that we can just spend, and we didn't. And we have been, I will add that we've been very transparent in all our meetings about how we have spent that money throughout our budget lines when we get to that in our meetings. But I think everybody should have a clear understanding of how that is spent. We just don't take the money and run with it with any way we want to, and I think people think that's what we can do with it. So if you could just give a general explanation so everyone has that, that would be great.
Are you, the process or where the money?
Yeah, like the process and you know, we had ESSER 1,
Yep.
ESSER 2.
Yep, so there was we're up to the 3 different ESSER programs, so ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. ESSER 2, about a chunk of it was used in 21, and we have a chunk of it that will be allocated in 22. ESSER 3, we had submitted, Dr. Cecil goes through and develops the budget for it. It gets submitted to RIDE. Myself, Ms. Danbrook sign off on it. And then we take that data and then we submit against it reimbursements for the different approved codes by RIDE. So all of it gets approved by RIDE before we're able to spend it. There is opportunity to adjust because programs like ESSER 3 spanning over 3 years to be locked in the first review would be a little excessive. So there's opportunity to adjust as time goes on. I don't know exactly what those time periods are, but yeah, that's how that it all gets submitted through RIDE. It is all reviewed by RIDE. We had a few questions come back on the ESSER 3 submittal. So yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I think that's important information for the community to hear because the process was never put out there. It's not like on the front page of the Providence Journal or something like that.
No,
So I think it's important to know that all the government money that we have used, we have given a reason for how do we use it, and it has to be approved by the Rhode Island Department of Education. And Dr. Cecil would like to add something.
Oops, yes, good evening. There were specific guidelines for use of that money as well, that 20% had to be used for making up for student learning loss. So that part of that money had to be used that way. And when we developed the budget, there are categories. It had to be related to COVID. Could not be used for just any operating part of a budget. It had to be used for that, and this has to, the last ESSER is good for a period of 3 years. So the money is supposed to help districts take care of excess costs associated with COVID over a period of years. So that was also how, when we were developing these budgets, we had to think about those things as well. So we've spent money on cleaning supplies. We've had excess costs in cleaning supplies, in substitutes, in the need for teacher aides, teaching assistants, who then became substitutes, building aides. You know, there was a whole host of expenses that resulted from COVID that these grants were meant to address, and that added to our problems with our budget. And so that's exactly how these funds have been used, and they can be amended, and we have amended them. Technology, you know, great example. It helped us to become one-to-one, and that was one of the intentions of the funds, was to help districts provide technology so students could work from home. So, my little 2 cents worth.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cecil. I know you put a lot of energy into it, and I appreciate both of you going through it. I just think it was something important to put out there, because there's a lot of questioning going around about, you know, how that money's spent, and people need to know there's guidelines on it. And it's not like we can just go and say, hey, we'll just pay for transportation with it next year. We can't do that. It's not allowed. And we have used money for programs to work on our kids' learning loss. And Dr. Schultz has worked very hard on these programs, and if you continue to watch, if you do watch the slideshows that she puts on in our monthly meetings, there's been some wonderful things developed, and some of it was used with ESSER money. So we're very grateful for that, because it is going to help our district, our children in our district. So Mr. Testa actually covered a lot of the things that I wanted to talk. I see Ms. Bacchus has her hand up.
Again, there's been a lot of upset and consternation over what is going on at Welk, and I'm wondering if somebody can perhaps speak to exactly what is being proposed, so that it's not a secret anymore. Whoever's most comfortable with that.
So, we have not made any decisions about Welk. We were looking at one specific program that dismisses at 1 p.m. There's a program that runs from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. that we're unable to provide transportation for. And that's the only program that we've taken a look at changing as far as the time.
Excuse me. This is not going to be a shouting match. He's trying to explain to us what's happening, and I'm having a hard time hearing him over people making comments in the audience, and I imagine other people are too, so please.
So with the 3 different dismissal times at Welk, we had to take a look at having students either dismiss at the half-day point or the full-day point. So that 1 p.m. dismissal needs to move to a full-day dismissal time. That's the only decisions that we've made about Welk at this point. Everything else was just a matter of looking at ways to be creative and get more students in the door there.
Thank
No,
you.
again, no decisions have been made. We have a meeting next week to kind of look at our programming and see where we're going.
Thank you.
Ms.
Madam
Bacchus,
Chair,
I was going to go.
I'm sorry. I have a couple of
Yeah,
budgetary questions
I
later.
think we all have a few questions about this, and following up with Ms. Bacchus, there has been a lot said. I actually think I have heard 4 different stories on what was happening, and it gets very confusing to know exactly what's happening. I heard it was a transportation issue. I heard it was that the kids were falling asleep, and that's why we went to half days. I heard it was to allow more children into the program. So I think that's where we're all a little bit confused on this, and no decisions have been made, and we know that because it has to go through the school committee. This board handles that, and everybody needs to know that. As far as my 2 cents on that goes, I don't know what the truth is at this point. I mean, you explained it, it's just a little bit vague for me to understand what you think is best. But personally, I have gone into Welk, and I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly in these programs. And I saw our people working extremely hard on them. But I have to be honest, I left, and when I got in my car, I had tears in my eyes. And I had tears in my eyes because I realized that if these children didn't have these programs, what would happen to them? Where would they go? They're fragile little 3-4-year-old kids. A lot of them can't communicate, and you can see the frustrations in their faces. And some of it was endearing when they wanted to communicate and they tried, but a lot of it was heartbreaking. And I know that these programs we have to offer them. And we're gonna have to actually, be prepared next week to be torn apart, because I have a lot of feelings on what should or shouldn't be done. And again, no matter what we want to do or what we decide to do, people are going to be dissatisfied and people are going to be satisfied. We have a hard job to do on this. But I don't feel like any child that's in this program already should lose any services. They need it. They absolutely need it. And I'm being honest, I left there, and for days I couldn't get these children out of my mind because they were precious. They're precious kids that deserve to have some type of life and learn how to get through it, because they don't have the advantages that we have. We don't have autism. We know how to communicate. And even those, we have problems communicating, and we're okay. And we need to have these programs, and I don't think they should be cut down to 2 hours. I don't think that's enough for any of these children.
So just to be...
Madam Chair?
Oh, go ahead.
Madam Chair, Director Machado wanted to speak about the 1 o'clock bus pickups.
Yes,
Sure.
please do, because like I said, one of them was transportation.
If I could clarify, so we were asked this year to pick up students at 1 p.m. for the special ed students that have our services provided to that school. This is the first year that we've had the 1 p.m. pickup, so we love working with Julie Martin and her team, so we tried it out. It is difficult. We have 8 buses currently at that time, which affects, we have many other programs running in the district. We have a 1 p.m. dismissal for our CTT transition students. We have other, schools that get out at that time, getting to the high school on time. So it was introduced to us as a pilot. Whether they had the 1 p.m. for students who don't need busing in the past, I'm not sure. I only provide special education buses to that group. So, looking at our budget for this year, we had to make cuts because I do need additional special ed busing if we continue with that program. And since transportation specifically, and every year we are asked to cut busing, that's just one of the unfortunate places that we had to take the busing from.
Okay.
For that 1 p.m. program. We are
Right.
still
We wouldn't-
doing...
Are you saying we wouldn't have a problem if they went a full day?
They've always gone a full day. So we do a 9 to 3, a 9 to 1, a 9 to 11:25, and then we also do a drop-off at 12:35 to 3. So they have multiple programs running, successfully. It's a wonderful program, and we really do love working with Julie. It's just that 1 p.m. is very difficult for us. So, again, if the buses are provided, if the money is provided to my department, we would be more than happy to run that program again for Julie and her team. But again, we're asked to cut, and we have to make those hard sacrifices.
I have a follow-up question on that. What was the reasoning, as, and I think the superintendent probably will be best to answer this because she's been here, but you can chime in too, Gary, for going the half-day, if we've always gone the full day?
So some students have have
Sure,
attended?
so there's multiple programs. We have a 9 o'clock, and I'm just speaking on busing. We have a 9 o'clock till 11:25. We
Right.
pick up at 11:25, and then we
Right.
have students coming in at 12:35 till 3. But then there's a group of students that go in from 9 to 1 and 9 to 3. So our buses are there very frequently due to the programming that they have.
But in the past, I'm sorry.
In the
Madam
past, we
Chair.
did not do a 1 o'clock pickup for students, for special ed students. So again, I can only speak on what we do for busing.
Right.
This was the first year in my 7 years of transportation that we did the 1 o'clock pickup.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, I believe the students attended either the half-day program or a full-day program at Welk in the past.
I can only speak to busing.
So-
I'm not sure about the programming.
Last time I was at Welk, it was a morning half-day program and then an afternoon half-day program for peers.
And then a 9 to 3.
And then a full-day program for other students.
I notice there's people that want to talk, and we are not having public comment today. We're trying to get through this. Next week, we're going to have public comment. This is, well, you have to let us get through this, so I'd appreciate your questions next week. We would love to hear them next week. Thank you. Anyone else? You had some questions?
Yeah, I had a couple more. Thank you. This is, I guess, to Ms. Ruggieri. This year, and maybe last year, we started running the building sub, right? So in this upcoming budget for '23, are we still doing that?
Yeah, so my team has been asking the principals how it's going so far, and many schools are reporting that they don't need the 2 building subs anymore. So we're looking at either doing like a district pool or 1 per school or that type of thing. We wouldn't have the same level of building subs next year that we have this year. However, I do think it's important to commit to a group of people that we will use every day in Warwick, so we don't lose them to other districts.
All right, so my follow-up question to that is, how does that relate or impact or dovetail with our line item for substitutes? Is that all
So-
built into that one line, Tim?
Yes, it is, yep.
Okay, so there's no impact, well, I mean, technically it would be, if you didn't need a substitute at all ever for the year, you wouldn't spend the 2 million that we have for subs,
Correct, yes.
right?
Correct.
But historically, I think we've budgeted 2 million in that line for a long time.
Correct, yeah.
And we have been using some ESSER funding for COVID-related substitutes. Not all of it, of course, but there has been some money allocated from ESSER.
Okay, and it's a related question from our meeting last week, and it has to do with school psychologists and school social workers, and I think you were here at the time. Was our goal at one point to have a school psychologist and social worker at every elementary school, or was it every other one?
It was every other one. They had a team that traveled between 2 schools.
Okay, are we at that? Because I know we were at it
No,
once and then we
we've
lost
had
people.
a lot of trouble onboarding social workers. We even tried this year after COVID to bring on another full-time social worker. We didn't get any applicants for it. You know, we'll have to look at the staffing with Mr. Capolino to see what he has. I believe there might be the social worker, but I'm not positive. The
Right. So,
applicants just aren't there.
my point is this, I mean, last meeting, social emotional learning was, it's a hot button issue. Pediatric side just came out today and said it's a crisis. So, yes, we'd love to have a psychologist and a social worker at every single school. Two things that kind of bash the brains out of that. Number one is budget, and number two is finding the people, right? So, we can keep looking, you know, and I don't think we should be criticized for not looking, but we shouldn't be criticized for not having them. Because if they're not available, you can't have them. So, okay, that was my first question. I have a transportation question. The budget for '23 is $12,595,163, and that's reflective of an 883 reduction.
Correct.
So walk me through that. Where's the 883 reduction? What's
Sure,
that from?
so we originally requested 101 buses, so that was 63 regular ed buses and 38 special ed buses. So when we were asked to cut down, we looked at how we could do it without being aggressive, super aggressive with the walking distance, which I will be bringing to you next month for an increase
Groundhog
because of
Day.
this cut. So we now have we're asking for 92. So 57 regular ed and 35 special ed.
And what's the difference in cost between a full-size, a 66-passenger bus and a special ed bus?
Sure, so a large bus cost is $408 a day, times 180 days is $73,000. A special ed bus with an aid, which all of our buses require that now, with the students that we have, is $583.89. So a cost for 180 days is 105, a little over 105. So we had a 4% increase from our last contract with First Student.
Okay, and with respect to our contract with First Student, I mean, everybody knows the problems with First Student.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that we're not paying for what we're not getting.
No, we're not. And we made that very clear this year with the meetings that we had. They understand where we are and what we expect from them, and it's, they've proven to be listening to us.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
We have
Well, I
Carla
mean,
on it, so.
Well, yeah, and we had them before us, and I'm not averse to doing that again. My hope is that other companies would jump into the fray and decide they want to bid on districts this size, because we have to provide it, we can't charge for it, it's just an expense, and again, we don't control the revenue line here, so it makes it difficult.
Correct.
So when you're forced to cut $883,000, right? You know, I said it before, I'll say it 100 more times. I don't know of a successful company in the country that has cut their way to growth. You can't. It's impossible. It doesn't work that way. And so lastly, Ms. Ruggiero, I did ask from a list of the staffing reductions. So one of these documents had, was it 22 Ys, 15 WTU? Is that what's being baked into this?
Yes.
Okay. We just don't know where they're coming from.
We're in the process right now of determining that.
Okay, and that's what you're going to share with us, right?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Cornell?
Yeah, so I have a few questions. The first is regarding other, which is 56211. This is for Mr. Oliver. So what does that other entail? It's for $40,484.
Can you give me the detail on that, Mr. McGrath, the other?
Yeah, I got that. So in that 56211, Career Center has a small request of $22 for its different protective equipment. So the main chunk of Kevin's, $40,000, is radon, fertilizer, topsoil, seed, infield mix, personal protective equipment, various items along those lines.
Okay, thank you. My next question, regarding the textbooks, I've noticed that there's a large increase in the price of textbooks. So what is the reason for that? It goes from up to $257,165. While in previous years it was much less. Like in the 22 budget, it was $121,823.54. So that's line item 56401.
Yeah, so in that there's the new ELA program, Read 180, different items that Ms. Schultz has requested through curriculum
Okay.
Good evening. So that line item, if I open up the spreadsheet that goes into the detail, most of the textbooks have been absorbed into ESSER 3, thank goodness, because we were mandated from the state to purchase the new curriculum at the high school and the middle school, at the elementary level. And so some of the things that weren't able to be absorbed into ESSER are recurring expenses. That's not what your question was, though. But I do have our Discovery Ed Tech Book, which is an online tool for SEL and social studies mainly. That is under that line. Everything else for me, however, has been absorbed into ESSER 3. So that one component was 48,000.
I see. Are there any other grants that could be used to pay for these textbooks?
So I'll just say what Dr. Cecil said. She
Oh,
said that,
I heard everything.
I
But
guess
you probably
they
should
couldn't
restate
hear in
it
the
for the
back.
public's benefit, though.
okay, sure. Just that we've maxed out the grants that we have available right now for everything. So, but we really have done our due diligence to use every available penny to pay for everything that we can.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. And the third thing, and this is just more for the edification of the public, so the increases in like oil, fuel, electricity, that's just due to the economic pressures of today, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we tried to reduce them, kind of looked at the trends to see where it landed, but those are very difficult to predict with the way oil prices are, electric prices. So yeah, there is an increase there. Yeah. So
Okay,
that-
thank
that's
you.
what-
I just think it's important for the public to know that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may. Mr. Cornell preempted me because that's what I'm coming for. On the gasoline and diesel fuel, I know we just put a flat budget line item, but is there a target price per gallon that we try to hit on that? Because I have to be honest with you, I've always gone to those two line items to find some money. Not going to cut it like, well, 100 grand, but
The price is $3.98 that we target for. Obviously, because it's substantially more now, we're probably going to be
is that the gas or the diesel?
Both.
both.
Well, 399?
397.
397, okay. And are we getting our gas from the city? Our gasoline?
That's correct.
We get it from there, right? And they charge us 5 or 10 cents a gallon, I think it is? Okay. And do we get the diesel from them too, or so we get them both?
No, diesel is Santa Buckley for me.
Well, I get diesel from the city.
Okay. And then, Mr. McGrath, on natural gas and fuel oil, are we buying contracts on that? Don't we buy for like a year or two at a time or something?
The natural gas, yes, we are in contract with, I believe, Direct Energy, but the oil contracts, I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, we buy oil futures.
We do, all right,
Yeah.
I thought we did.
Yep.
And then are we, I know for a while there was we would replace some systems in buildings, we reduce our reliance on oil and switch to natural gas, but have we done, is there anything that we've done recently that uses less oil and transfers to gas, or has that work kind of been done?
Right now, Warwick Vets has come off oil. Pilgrim is off oil. The remaining buildings are still on oil. Gorton,
So that doesn't
yeah.
change until the infrastructure
Yeah,
projects change?
until the infrastructure's changed, right.
Okay. Do we have use per building? So in other words, when Sherman's done or when Hoxie's done, do we know how much oil we're just going to take out of that stream?
Well,
Or how much gas? or
the
whatever it is?
the efficiencies on the new systems, Mr. Gosberg will have to answer to that, but obviously we'll see a gas reduction because of the efficiencies on the new system.
Right, and then if a current school is running an oil system, an oil-fired system, then we're going to eliminate that oil
Correct.
use in that one particular building. So that's what I'm kind of getting at, so.
Correct, but we'll pick up a gas charge at that
Yeah.
point because we're
Yep.
eliminating the oil but picking up gas.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
have, this has been curious since I, excuse me, since I received my information. On line number 51323 is detention coverage. I know it's not a lot of money. I'm just curious how detention is going to be covered if we cut it.
So, Madam Chair, this was a discussion that I had with Mr. McGrath, and I was under the assumption that detention is 1 day a week, and that one of the 3 assistant principals could cover detention. But after speaking with Assistant Superintendent McCaffrey, he did not think that would be feasible, but that was my thinking.
So it's still in there, but we're not, you're now taking it out? I'm just confused because, I mean, it's $15,000, but we do have detention and it does serve a purpose, and I just didn't know who would be covering it if we cut it.
So now it's 1 day a week, so like I said, I figured that out of the 3 assistant principals, that one could cover it and they could take turns. I don't know if Assistant Superintendent McCaffrey, if you would like to expand on that. You did not think that was a good idea.
Based on our discussion and reflecting upon detention and how it's administered at the high schools and the middle schools, I didn't think it was a good idea. I think it's money well spent.
So we're going to keep the 15,000, is that what you're saying?
I believe it would be added to the budget that's presented today.
Because I have a line through it on mine.
Like I said, I believe it's going to be added to the superintendent's budget that's submitted to you.
Madam Chair, those conversations took place after the budget documents were issued, so we can add that into the.
Okay, so it's actually 15,000 more?
Right.
Okay, that's my question.
Yep.
That's why I was like, so it's in or is it out?
Yeah, no.
Because it's only 15,000. When people say only, that always upsets me. But it is $15,000, but I'm thinking more about how detention is going to work. So thank you for clarifying that. So we should just add 15,000 on. Okay, thank you very much. Anyone? Mr. Cornell?
Yeah, so, in line item, 53410, it's police fire details for $10,000. Like, I know the police and fire, that's a city. Is there any way we can maybe work with them to bring that number down, or?
It's a conversation we can have with the city. Sometimes they're willing to negotiate on those items, sometimes they're not. So yeah, it's definitely something I can bring up with them.
Okay, thank you.
It sounds like that is a reduced rate, but I can definitely confirm that with them.
Well, here it looks like it's been 10,000 since.
No, I know,
20
but the rate that we get charged is already a reduced rate as what they would charge someone else. So,
Okay.
yeah, so we just have to look to see if if they have any more room to reduce that rate.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I don't necessarily have a question for anybody in administration. I just think that I know we have a meeting next week. I just want to put on the record that we may have to have 2 meetings because at the next meeting, we're going to have a lot of public comment, I'm sure. And I expect it and I welcome it and whatnot. So I think we should just hold in the back of our heads that we may not be able to wrap this thing up next Tuesday. That's all. And if we have to do something another day of the week or whatever, just, you know, this, as I said earlier, the 5.8 is defendable. But we have to be pragmatic here, and we've got to be a realist as to what our audience is when we go before City Council. So we just have to make sure that we've done, I mean, this is nothing new, but we have to make sure we've done anything and everything to possibly come up with that number. So whatever that number is, it is. And we need to hear from the public, from WTU, from WISE, from anybody and their uncle who wants to speak, to tell us you doing okay, you guys awful, or whatever. So I just want to leave that out there just in case, because we could be here until midnight next week, and that wouldn't be fair to the public either.
Yes, Ms. Bacchus?
I concur with Mr. Testa. I am not aware of too many times that the school committee has only met once to deliberate on the budget after the presentation, so I think we should schedule Wednesday or Thursday of next week, and right now.
I don't disagree. I think, providing.
Well, then let's do it.
We can circulate dates tomorrow. It's not on the agenda, so we can't discuss that. But we can send emails.
Well,
out.
it is part of budget
It's not listed as an action item, Ms. Backus.
Yeah, so that's fine.
Until Friday to schedule a meeting.
Madam Chair, I do have one other question.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm scrolling through these documents. Professional development, have we reduced all of it? That's completely cut? And that what? Oh, I just lost it. I'm sorry. What was the please help me, because this thing just jumped on me.
I don't mind speaking to that. So professional development, as we discussed at the last meeting with the new calendar adoption, we've cut most of the professional development days down, which is a huge cost savings for us, thank goodness. And so what we're going to be doing is we're still going to be offering professional development, but we'll be weaving it into the day. So we've hired coaching for our ELA programs and for math, and so we're going to be doing it in that capacity during school days and finding coverage within the day in order to make that happen, because we don't have those set PD days next year, like our May 9th day that we had this year. We're not going to have that type of format next year.
So those are the things we approved some of those last week, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we
Okay.
have right now two half days on the calendar, but they're not. One is not mandatory for staff, so we do have to be creative. And but it was a huge cost savings.
Okay. Because and again, at the end of the day, this business is about students. Right? It's all about students. Everything we do here impacts students. So we have to be extremely mindful of that. Thank you. Not that we aren't. I'm not saying we aren't, but just thank you.
I have a question, actually, and it's in the same area about the 51308, the after-school instruction. We're going to cut for budget reduction of $20,000. Could someone please tell me what programs are going to be cut with this $20,000? I know that we had problems with after-school things because of busing, the dreadful word, but I'm just curious as to what that would be entailed for the $20,000.
Dr. Schultz and I'm sorry, Madam Chair, Dr. Schultz and Mrs. Cousineau, would that be some of the money that we transferred into ESSER for our after-school programming?
Not that we know of. That money that we have in place for the extended day academies is covered in ESSER for next year, and moving forward, it's all grant funded. So I'm personally not sure where that 20,000 is. I don't have it on my budget spreadsheet.
I can pull the detail on that. I'll have to look in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'm just curious as to what, with that $20,000 was cut. I just, we want to keep as many programs as we can. So if you could let me know what that is, that would be great. Mr. Cornell?
Yeah, so I had a question on item 58101, so it's professional organization dues and fees. So it's budget for $164,244. So which dues and fees for which organizations is this entailed to?
I'm just pulling it up for you.
So,
the
Madam
items that-
Chair, look, I can start.
Okay, go
I know
for it.
some
Yeah, I
of
think you
them,
had a list over there, and I had the.
Is the RIAS memberships for all the principals is part of it. RIMTA memberships, REAL is what, 62,000, it was a big chunk of that. And NESDEC is that we're obligated to join.
What
And-
organization had the biggest chunk? What did you say, Real?
Real, yep.
Rhode Island ISCA Sports,
Okay,
and also NESDEC.
okay. Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah, also, Nathan, NEASC and College Board, we're required to be members of.
Okay, so the money for NEOS, so that's under this?
Yes.
Okay.
And Mr. McGrath, did I miss anything?
Nope, those are the main ones, College Board, Real, RIASP, yep, those are all the big ones.
Thank you, that's good to know.
So? No, you're good? Ms. Bacchus? I will say I'm happy to see that the ESY program is fully grant-funded, and that is not going to be shortened in any way, and it's going to stay the same. So whoever was responsible for that, maybe Dr. Cecil? Oh? Gary, was that you? Okay, thank you very much that that got covered.
Madam Chair, I just want to, talk about ESY. So the busing is not grant funded, so it is in my request for ESY. I just want to make that clear.
So the busing is included in the transportation costs? Okay, awesome. Thank you for pointing that out. I'm just happy the program's going to go on. I'm also glad to see that we're keeping our psychologists and social workers on board. I think right now that's extremely important. So thank you for not making us argue that too, because I would have argued that. So good job. Okay, at this point, I think we've asked questions for today, and we have all week to have lots of brainstorming on this, and we will have Ms. Bonet send out an email regarding doing one more meeting. At this time, can I have before we do that, I'll just say we have our special school committee meeting for the budget continuing on Tuesday, next Tuesday, April 26th. And then our monthly school committee meeting is Tuesday, May 10th. And obviously, stay tuned to our website for an additional meeting, but I would believe it would be after this next Tuesday, so we'll be able to announce it for next week. We'll add an additional day. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye.